Over the last 2 winters, the rabbits have attacked our fruit trees mercilessly. In fact, last season we lost one of our peach trees to a storm because of the damage that the rabbits had done the previous winter. It was so weak that it just broke in half during a pretty strong wind. And on top of that, they severed all of our grapevines all the way down to the main plant this past winter, to the point where, well, fortunately, we were able to salvage some of them and make some wreaths. Last year, we tried to foil the rabbits by wrapping the trunks in a white plastic made for that exact purpose, and they still found a way over it. So this year, we're going to try something different.
Guten yardening, everybody! One of the things that we've done as a part of our transformation from a yard space into a garden the whole way around our house is to add a bunch of different varieties of fruit trees. Now that process has only been going on for a couple of years, and this year some of these fruit trees actually produced some fruit for us, and that's exciting, of course, because we want to see more and more production of fruit. However, one of the things that we have struggled with every single winter is protecting these trees from the rabbits. And I can't tell you just how bad of a pest those rabbits are, especially over the winter. Yes, they will come in and eat some of our vegetables over the summer, but we're out here all the time. In the wintertime, that's not the case. They don't have any other food source really in this area. And so what they've tended to do in the past is to come up to our trees and to gnaw at that bark. And they don't actually just limit themselves to the trees, although you can see the damage created by these rabbits is really substantial if we allow them to get anywhere close to the trunks of these trees. They also, last season, went after all of our grapevines. And yes, we will be pruning back our grapevines ourselves, but the rabbits went at these and basically gnawed them down to nothing. And I think that really impacted our production of grapes this year because they went after those. So one of the things we had to come up with this season is a way to try to protect these beyond just this white wrap. Now, I think that this white wrap is fantastic in many ways. It's certainly covering in a tree that doesn't have any of the lower branches or isn't too thick. It certainly can cover up and protect it from those rabbits. The problem is not every tree is shaped like this, and also, well, we get a lot of snow here in Zone 5, Wisconsin. And that snow isn't something that just comes and goes quickly. A lot of times that snow will come, it will fall, and then the next snow will layer on top of that. And what you end up with is some serious snow depth. And if you think about it, if you have snow that's a foot high, and that's all the higher you can get the wrap on these trees, well, the rabbits can come along and get right at the trees right above that layer. And so it may seem like this is good protection at first, and I think it does do something, but in the grand scheme of things, we need more protection. And that need for more protection is where we came up with one of the ideas that we're going to use this season to see how well it works in protecting these trees. Right beside me, I have some of the bigger tomato cages that we used this year. These are steel tomato cages that a friend of ours gave to us. And we're using them to really trellis our tomatoes. And now that we're done with the tomatoes, we don't need them in there anymore. One of the thoughts is a lot of our trees are still young enough that this would fit right over top of those trees. Now all these cages are 4 feet tall, but we do have a couple of different diameters. This one is a little bit smaller, about 14 inches, I would say. But it's big enough to actually fit over top of this 3rd year Asian pear. And so I realized that the squares here are very big, and that in and of itself wouldn't be enough to stop pests getting in.
So what we're going to do is a multi-layer approach. We've got some of these wraps, these trunk wraps here down at the bottom. They're going up about 14 inches.
And we also have this roll of all natural burlap, and I think this or floating row covers would work just as well. What we're going to try to do is to wrap this cage, with our goal being to make access to the tree as frustrating as possible. And even though I realize they could definitely eat through this if they want to, I think maybe if we create that additional barrier, that might give us the results we're looking for.
Now my assumption is that some of you probably have a lot more expertise in terms of overwintering your fruit trees than I do.
And so if you have some better suggestions for how to keep the pests from eating our bark over the winter, we'd certainly love to entertain them.
Now our plan to fasten these in place is actually really quite simple. Of course we want to hold it up, so we're going to just use a zip tie around one of the top tier here. We'll do that in a couple of spots, so that'll keep it up instead of sinking down. And then I'm going to do the same thing right down the length of it, right where I have wrapped this before I cut this off. Well, I hope what I've done is to provide a disincentive to the rabbits by adding these multiple layers of protection to this tree, so that in the end, they'll look elsewhere for their tree bark or whatever it is they're trying to eat over the winter. Now, this is our first year trying this method, but what I can tell you is our floating row covers have certainly protected our plants from the rabbits in the summertime. So if something like this or floating row covers can do it then, well, hopefully they'll be able to do the same thing over the winter. Now, for a much bigger tree like this one, this is our peach tree. It's about 15 feet tall right now. It is massive. There's no way I'd be able to put anything over top of this. So instead, what I'm going to do is just loosen the cage up completely. That way I can open it up. And once I have it opened up, I can just wrap it right around the tree. Now, this is something that can be done with chicken wire or just about any other kind of fencing pretty easily, I think. And again, I believe this is going to make a pretty substantial difference with the ability of the animals to access this tree bark. I'm just going to tighten it up like so. And we are in good shape. And one of the things I really like about these cages is that they are really nice and sturdy. And this is a steel cage, and so it's not going to blow anywhere. I can fasten this up or not, and I can push this down a little bit and wrap it with our burlap, and we should be in good shape. Now, you can see the substantial damage that the rabbits did to our grapevines last year. This is just one example, but what we're going to do for these, because it's a lot harder to put anything around them, but you can see how they sprawl out, and we're not yet ready to prune them back. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this row covering material around and over these to try to protect them as much as I can. I'll show you what that looks like when I'm done. Now, I know this probably looks a bit chaotic, but what I've done is wrap each individual vine coming out of the main plant as high up as I could. Now, this would be a lot easier if I didn't have this trellising all around it. And because this trellis is actually our gateway arch, it was easier for me to get on the other side of it. So you can see I've got a nice wrap around the entirety of this grapevine right now, and I think that's going to create a nice barrier. And one more thing we're going to be sure to do is when the snow comes, we're going to come out here to our grapes and to our fruit trees, and we're going to push the snow back to try to discourage the rabbits from getting up above our barriers. And I guess, you know, this is again our first time trying this method. Hopefully it works. We'll certainly know once that snow falls and those rabbits get really hungry. Well, we hope you found this video useful, especially if you're struggling with some of the same problems we are over the winter. If you did find it useful, don't forget to give us a like, leave us a comment, remember to share and subscribe, and most importantly, remember, when you're with us, you are good to grow.